This is Mark is Read, a podcast devoted to discovering, reading, and obsessing over books. I'm your host, Taylor Neary. Let's get into it. Season 4, Episode 5, The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Mark is Read. It has been a minute and I'm very sad that I haven't been able to be recording podcasts, but I actually had mouth surgery about a month ago, so talking and then being on camera was not exactly the thing that I wanted to be doing. So had to wait for all of that to get better, and now it has, so we're back. Yay! And today we're talking about The Serpent and the Wings of Night, which I'm very excited to be talking about in general because I loved the book, but I also have started reading the sequel to it and already loving that. And the author, Carissa Broadbent, has written a couple other series that are, I believe, kind of in the same universe. So I'm excited to then be able to read those other books since I already loved this one so much. So let's go ahead and dive in. So as you may remember from a couple seasons ago, I have read Carissa Broadbent before. We read Six Scorched Roses, which is a novella, and really enjoyed that. So I was expecting to like Serpent and the Wings of Night, and honestly I did. I thought it was great. The character development is great, the storyline is great, there are surprises, but not too many, I don't think. There's a good amount of action, there is a little bit of spice, but not too much spice, I don't think. And I think just the storyline in general and kind of the magical world that's being developed is really interesting. So vibes-wise, it very much gives me kind of a Hunger Games Light Lark vibes, and maybe it's because there's just this big tournament situation, and you know, like, that's cool. And those are kind of the only other two books that I have read that really had that tournament vibe. But it does kind of have that people are not expecting to get out of the tournament. You know, they either need to win or they're gonna die. So definitely kind of has those, like, who can you trust? We are expecting everyone to die, so like you don't really want to build relationships, all of that kind of stuff as a major undertone to basically every conversation that happens in the book. And you have this competition as the structure, but you have a lot of other aspects to it, and I think in a way that's very different from Hunger Games or even Light Lark. The competition is very much, you know, kind of the timeline for the book, but I think in a way is not really like the main issue at all that anyone is dealing with. I mean, you're trying to figure out like what Aurea's history is, like what her skills are, like what her plan is, and she's a human in this vampire world, and like how all of this fits in and how she isn't just dying all of the time. And then you also had this huge will they won't they vibe between Aurea and Rain, and then you had this whole relationship with Aurea and her adopted vampire dad kind of dude, Vincent, and then also all of this political turmoil / revolution that's happening at the same time as the games. And so it's like the Kajari is happening, but for me at least, that does not feel like the major plot point, just because there are so many other conflicts that are happening at the same time. And also you have these like different tasks within the Kajari, but it's not all of the time. There is this downtime, which I think allows us to learn a lot more about the other characters and kind of build out the storyline past just this competition that's happening. So within that competition though, there is very much this who can we trust and who is hiding what and like how much are they hiding. And I mean, I think we know from the beginning that Misha and Rain are definitely hiding something. We just don't know what it is they're hiding or why they want to or are willing to partner with Aurea. And I mean, okay, from here on out, spoilers, so don't listen if you haven't read the book yet. But you kind of know that they are against Vincent and part of this smaller group of vampires that has been essentially exterminated by Vincent and his leadership. But you don't realize to what scale that's at. And I mean, I think I was definitely thinking as I was reading that they specifically were pairing with Araya so that they could get to Vincent, but I was definitely thinking of it as they needed something from her, like in terms of using her as blackmail for Vincent, or like she had information or access to something that they needed, not so much that like how it actually turns out. And it kind of strikes me that Rain doesn't actually mean to partner with Araya the way he does, and that like he does want to use her, but then he does have this draw to her. And so while he outwardly is like, oh, well, you'll be easier to kill / you're helpful for me in the future, his actual reasoning for partnering with her is not actually that, and is more so that he feels this connection with her and is very impressed with her and just like kind of wants to be around her. But we definitely get this kind of like everyone kind of feels like an enemy for the whole time. I mean, and you got the Septimus kind of stuff. Basically every conversation Araya has, I'm like, okay, so are you trying to kill her? Are you trying to kill her? And I know that we're like Vincent is like on Araya's side, but I don't trust him from the start. It just, A, he seems to be hiding so much, and B, it doesn't make sense why he would have taken her in and done all of this and like trained her and everything and like encouraged her to go into the Kajari, even if she was going to then tie herself to him. Like it feels like we're missing something, because there is this huge threat of heirs and like people taking over power and things like that. And that he either knows that Araya has like a hidden power or something that he wants access to, or some other reason that he considers her a threat or important and wants her to win the Kajari so that she can tie herself to him so that she is no longer a threat to him, or she ends up dying in the Kajari and then he doesn't have to deal with it. But either way, we know that there's something we're missing the entire time, which adds a very interesting undertone, I think, to the entire story, because it's not so much that Araya is an unreliable narrator for her chapters. I think she is overall a pretty reliable narrator. It's more so that she has so little of the information in terms of the bigger picture that it almost comes across as an unreliable narrator, because she doesn't have the information to share. And then, you know, like the Rain chapters, obviously he's very clearly hiding something, and so he is very much an unreliable narrator. But overall, I think all of that makes the book really interesting and adds all of these different aspects to it, so your mind is like constantly trying to figure out the puzzle when you don't even know what the whole puzzle is or like where the pieces are. And the book really does end on this major cliffhanger, and it's kind of a different cliffhanger than I expected. You know, like you kind of figured that they both can't die, and so like how's the Kajari gonna end? Like, is it gonna be a Hunger Games situation where neither of them die or what? But I was not expecting it to be Araya killing Rain, because he like basically kind of allows himself to be killed, and then her saying that she wished that that didn't happen and like kind of undoing it. So it's like they both win, but they don't. I don't know. That kind of was interesting. But then even more so, Rain and his actions immediately after winning and like immediately killing Vincent, and then like taking over and being like, okay, so we're not killing Araya or putting her in prison, which is kind of what I expected, but I guess that would have been very predictable. But instead, we're gonna make her the queen and I'm gonna marry her so that she can't be killed. And then also her becoming the heir. That all was very interesting, and lots of questions, I think, for the sequel, because I was under the impression that the air mark could only go to a vampire. So does Aureia get it because she won the Kajari and is basically culturally a vampire now? Or is there actually something we don't know where she's like part vampire, but can you be part vampire? Like, that doesn't really seem to make sense to me, just in terms of like how vampire lore works. But then again, like, this is a different world and anything could be happening. So like, what do we know? Like, I don't know, like maybe in this vampire world you can be a part vampire. I don't know, but we definitely end up with more questions than answers, which is a great way to end a book, because I was very ready to read the next one, but is very interesting just in terms of storyline, because it ends with such open questions, and like nothing really is resolved, even though the Kajari is over. So thinking about kind of some of the other questions that I had while reading the book, I definitely thought Vincent was hiding things, but definitely didn't see like her potentially being a half vampire, and definitely gonna need more information. Like, who is Aureia's mom? Because from everything we know, her parents were just like regular people. So is Vincent actually her like biological dad, or is her like one of her parents like part vampire, and like she still was able to become Vincent's heir just because she was raised by him? But like, were her parents who were killed supposedly with her other siblings, like, were they someone important or somehow play into this? Or is this kind of like a Zeus situation where Vincent went out and like raped someone essentially, and then created an heir so that he could have somebody? But it just seems like there is a lot of questions around that, and definitely a lot of questions that I have, and I feel like that is gonna have to be a major aspect of the next book, to kind of explain why Vincent had this obsession with Aureia and was so desperate for her to be his heir, and why he found her to be so important. Like, it had to be more than he was just impressed with her as a child. So lots of questions about that, and then also lots of questions about Aureia's future. Like, she's a badass. We already knew that. We've known that the entire book, but now we definitely know that. So what's happening now? Like, I don't foresee her just kind of like falling over and like letting Rain rule, and like not acknowledging the air mark, and not feeling something towards Vincent, and not just kind of revolting because that's what someone told her to do. But it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out, because it felt like throughout this whole book, Aureia was already kind of revolting against Vincent in terms of how he was leading, and just like her lack of information and how sheltered she was. And she didn't agree with like how vampires were living, especially in comparison to humans and all of that. So it's like the entire time I was expecting her to kind of turn against Vincent for those reasons, but now she has essentially been forced to turn against Vincent because of Rain killing him. So is she going to kind of continue in Vincent's footsteps to honor her father, or like how is she going to kind of grapple with all of that in terms of the grief, but also her own like more liberal, essentially, political leanings, and like how she thought the world should be ruled. So that'll be interesting. And then the other big question I have is about Misha, because we know that she kind of forced Rain into the Kajari, but she had to know that for the Kajari someone has to die, or basically everyone has to die other than the winner. So either she was 100% sacrificing herself with the understanding that Rain was going to win, but then once they bring in Aureia, she had to know that Aureia needed to die for Rain to win. So just like kind of all of her actions and how that all comes about. Like, does she know something because she has like this access to the other gods and other magical potential aspects that we don't really understand about, like how Rain and Aurea are like working together or fit together in the larger picture. It just, all of her actions and how supportive she was of Aurea just didn't make sense to me a lot of times, because for Aurea to live, Rain would have to die and vice versa. And all of that leads to Misha dying as well. So, like, how does this all work out essentially? And not clear to me how all of that's going to happen. But I'm assuming we're going to kind of get some answers, hopefully, to that in the second book. Also, definitely gonna have to go back and read Six Scorched Roses, because I kind of remember general things, but I do not remember the actual characters. So I don't know who in Rain's group is Six Scorched Roses people. And so I definitely have some questions, which more has to do with my own memory. And I'll be interested to read that again once I finish the sequel to this one. So definitely reading the sequel right now. We will definitely have an episode on that coming up, where hopefully we will be able to answer some of these questions. But for now, I think I'm going to leave our conversation there. I would love to hear y'all's thoughts on this in terms of the storyline, any questions you have, your thoughts on kind of this vampire world where there are these different types of vampires between the born and the turned, and also the different turned vampires where you have kind of like the bat leathery wing ones and then the feather wing ones, and kind of like how this whole world is being created. I think it's very unique and different, and would love to hear some of y'all's thoughts on it. So, some things for us to talk about in the meantime. Thinking about other things we are reading, watching, and listening. So in terms of reading, I read a couple months ago and hadn't had a chance to talk with y'all about the Cinnamon Roll Bookstore, and it is such a cute romance book. Absolutely love it. I will make sure to link it in our newsletter about this episode, but highly recommend if you're looking for just a fun, light romance book. And also there are cinnamon rolls in a bookstore. So like, what more do you need to know? In terms of things I've been listening to, I have really been on a Gracie Abrams kick lately. I am loving her music, and it has definitely been on repeat on Spotify for me. And finally, other things we are watching. My husband and I just binge watched this show on BritBox called Ludwig, is how it's spelled, Ludwig. It's pronounced Ludwig because they're fancy. But it is a very fun, very British mystery detective show. It definitely has some very serious moments, but also has some really humorous moments, and it's just a really unique kind of concept for a detective show, and I would highly recommend it. I think there's only 7 or so episodes, and they're already working on filming a season 2, so you have that to look forward to moving forward, but the first season is really great, and I would highly recommend it. And then for next week's episode, we are talking about a book that I am super excited about. It's called The Turnglass by Gareth Rubin. So I bought this book on my England bookstore adventures, actually in Bath at my absolute favorite bookstore called Mr. B's Emporium. Highly, highly recommend Mr. B's if you are in Bath. But this is a mystery book, and definitely like murder mystery detective-y. But the reason why I was so interested in it is it actually is a flip book. So you can start on this side, or you can start on this side and you read halfway and then you flip it over and you get another story. But the stories are super intertwined and reference each other, and it is just a very interesting and unique book, kind of like book layout, and also the story itself is really interesting. So we will be talking about this next week, and I'm very excited to talk about this book with y'all. So I will leave it there for now. We will be back with regularly posted episodes now that my mouth is better and I can talk as much as I want. So look forward to that. I can't wait to hear what you guys think about The Serpent and the Wings of Night. And otherwise, I'll see you guys next time. Have a fabulous week of reading. Bye for now. This has been Mark is Read. Thank you for listening. Please rate, review, and share the podcast, as that is how people find us. Email markasreadpod@gmail.com to suggest books, and subscribe to the newsletter at markasreadpod.substack.com. See you next time, and enjoy a week of reading.